The heart functions as a pump in the circulatory system to provide a continuous circulation of blood throughout the body. The cardiovascular system is composed of two circulatory parts, namely the pulmonary circulation, which is the circuit through the lungs where blood is oxygenated, and the systemic circulation, which is the circuit through the rest of the body receiving the oxygenated blood. As blood flows through the circulation, the size of the vessel decreases from artery or vein to arteriole or venules, and finally into capillaries, which are the smallest vessels for gas and nutrient exchange. Pulmonary circulation is the movement of deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs for oxygenation and return back to the heart again. Oxygen depleted blood from the body leaves the systemic circulation when it enters the right atrium through the superior and inferior vena cava. The blood is then pumped through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, from where it is pumped into the pulmonary artery through the pulmonary valve. Here, the blood enters the pulmonary circulation, where carbon dioxide is exchanged for oxygen in the lungs by passive diffusion. As the myocardium of the ventricle contracts, the pressure within the ventricular chamber raises, causing the blood to flow from high pressure to low pressure areas. In order to prevent any potential backflow of blood, the papillary muscles also contract, generating tension on the chordae tendineae and flaps of the valves. This prevents the backflow of blood into the atria during ventricular contraction. When the right ventricle contracts, it ejects blood into the pulmonary artery, which branches into the left and right pulmonary arteries that carry deoxygenated blood to each lung. The pulmonary semilunar valve prevents backflow from the pulmonary artery. In the lungs, the blood travels through capillary beds on the alveoli where respiration occurs, exchanging carbon dioxide for oxygen into the blood. The oxygenated blood then leaves the lungs through pulmonary veins and returns to the left atrium, completing the pulmonary circuit. In systemic circulation, the blood moves from the heart to the rest of the body to provide oxygen and nutrients, and in return bring deoxygenated blood back to the heart. The blood from left atrium is then pumped through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, blood is pumped through the aortic valve into the aorta, known as the largest artery of the body. The aorta arches and branches into major arteries to supply blood to the upper and lower parts of the body. The arteries branch into smaller arteries, arterioles, and finally to capillaries to travel through systemic circulation, delivering oxygenated blood to the body. Oxygen in the blood then diffuses out into the cell, while waste and carbon dioxide from the cell diffuses into the blood. The coronary circulation supplies blood to the heart muscles itself and is also part of the systemic circulation. The deoxygenated blood continues through the capillaries, which merge into venules, then veins, and finally the vena cava, which drain into the right atrium of the heart and the process continues. The increased distance from the heart cause veins to have low pressure than arteries. Thus, in one complete circuit, the blood has to pass through the heart twice, once through the right heart and the second through the left. This type of circulation is known as double circulation, which is found in four-chambered heart as in mammals. In case of single circulation, blood passes through the heart once and only deoxygenated blood comes to the heart. This type of circulation is found in fishes. Among the various functions of the circulatory system, the major ones are namely, it carries oxygen from lungs to the tissues and carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs. It carries nutrients and hormones to the tissue cells for assimilation, while carries the various waste products from the tissues to the sites of elimination. It maintains the pH, ionic and osmotic balance of the body fluids. It also helps in regulating the body temperature. It plays a very important role in providing immunity to the body. The cardiac cycle refers to a complete heartbeat from its generation to the beginning of the next beat, which includes systole and diastole and the intervening pause. Systole refers to the contraction of heart and diastole means relaxation. The cardiac cycle consists of 72 beats per minute and its total duration is 0.8 seconds. The cycle begins with contraction of atria and ends with relaxation of the ventricles. The atria and ventricles work in concert. So, in systole, when the ventricles are contracting, the atria are relaxed and collect blood. When the ventricles are relaxed in diastole, the atria contract to pump blood to the ventricles. This coordination ensures blood is pumped efficiently to the body. This heart action can be divided into three phases. Phase 1, known as atricular systole. As the atria begin to fill with blood, the pressure raises. This causes the atria to contract and the blood moves from the atria into the ventricles, accompanied by opening of the auriculoventricular valves. During this flow of blood to the ventricles, the semilunar valves remain closed. Phase 2, called ventricular systole. The blood-filled ventricles now experiences rise in pressure. When the ventricular pressure is greater than the atrial pressure, the tricuspid and mitral valves closes. As the ventricles contract, the pressure forces the pulmonary valves and semilunar aortic valve to open, causing the blood to be pumped into the pulmonary artery and systemic aorta. The atria are now in the relaxing stage. As the ventricles start to relax, the semilunar valves closes in response to the decreased pressure. Phase 3, called atrioventricular diastole. Now, both the atria and ventricles are relaxed for a while, since blood moves from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. Hence, blood flows into the atria through the coronary sinus, vena cava and pulmonary veins. This phase is also known as general pause. All these phases constitute a complete cardiac cycle and are repeated continuously to generate heartbeats. We shall now understand the transmission of cardiac action potential through the heart's conduction system. The heart has an inherent property to contract rhythmically. The mammalian heart is myogenic, so the heartbeat originates from muscle and is regulated by nerves. The normal rhythmical heartbeat, called sinus rhythm, is established by the nodal tissues. In birds and mammals, the rhythm originates in the sinoatrial node or SA node, found in the upper part of the right atrium near to the junction with the superior vena cava and auricular appendages. It is the heart's main pacemaker. Here, an electrical signal is generated that travels through the heart, causing the heart muscle to contract wherever it travels. The electrical signal from SA node travels through the right atrium in a radial way and via Bachmann's bundle to the left atrium, such that both left and right atria contract together. The signal then travels to the auriculoventricular or AV node, which is found at the bottom of the right atrium in the atrioventricular septum, lying in the boundary between the right atrium and the left ventricle. It is the latent pacemaker of the heart. There is a slight delay of 0.1 second in the transmission of impulse from AV node to the next part. This ensures sufficient time for the ventricles to be filled with blood before contracting. The signal then travels along the bundle of His to left and right bundle branches and then reaches the Purkinje fibers. This transmits the electrical charge to the ventricles, causing it to contract together. The rate of conduction of impulse through the SA node is very slow, about 0.05 meter per second, while 5 meter per second faster through the bundle of His. Electrical activities of the heart can be recorded by the electrocardiogram or ECG. The impulse originates due to prepotential caused by slow influx of sodium ions until the threshold is reached, followed by a rapid depolarization and repolarization. The prepotential initiates the spontaneous depolarization and contraction of the cell. There is no resting potential in the cardiac muscles. Cells in the SA node create and sustain its own rhythm by creating an action potential caused by the movement of specific electrolytes into and out of the pacemaker cells. The action potential then spreads to nearby cells by the conducting system. When the sinoatrial cells are resting, they have a negative charge on their membranes. However, a rapid influx of sodium ions causes the membrane's charge to become positive. This is called depolarization and occurs spontaneously. Once the cell has a sufficiently high charge, the sodium channels close and calcium ion then begin to enter the cell, shortly after which potassium begins to leave it. All the ions travel through ion channels in the membrane of the sinoatrial cells, of which the potassium and calcium channels are voltage gated. Shortly after this, the calcium channels close and potassium channels open. allowing potassium to leave the cell. This causes the cell to have a negative resting charge and is called repolarization. When the membrane potential reaches approximately minus 60 millivolt, the potassium channels close and the process may begin again. The ions move from areas where they are more concentrated to areas of less concentration. Calcium also plays a critical role by combining with the regulatory protein troponin C to enable contraction of the cardiac muscle. The resting heart rate of a newborn can be 129 beats per minute, and this gradually decreases until maturity. The adult resting heart rate changes from 60 to 100 beats per minute, which can be affected by exercise, age, and basal metabolic rate. The cardiac output is a measurement of the amount of blood pumped by each ventricle, that is, stroke volume in 1 minute. This is calculated by multiplying the stroke volume with the beats per minute of heart rate. The average stroke volume is about 70 ml, while the heart rate is 72 beats per minute. Hence, the average cardiac output is 5.25 liter per minute. The stroke volume is normally measured using an echocardiogram and can be influenced by the size of the heart, physical and mental condition of the individual, sex, contractility, duration of contraction, preload and afterload. The blood pressure is the pressure of the blood on the walls, which includes systolic pressure and diastolic pressure, and is measured by sphygmomanometer. The normal values of systolic pressure are 100 to 120 mm mercury and diastolic pressure is 60 to 80 mm mercury. The difference between these two pressures is called pulse pressure, which is normally 35 to 55 mm mercury. The closure of the heart valves produces heart sounds. One of the simplest methods of assessing the heart's condition is to listen to it using a stethoscope. In a healthy heart, there are only two audible heart sounds called S1 and S2. The first heart sound is S1, which is the sound created by the closing of the atrioventricular valves during auricular contraction and is normally described as lub, lasting about 0.1 to 0.17 seconds. The second heart sound is S2 and is produced by the closing of semilunar valves during ventricular diastole and is described as dub, lasting about 0.1 to 0.14 seconds. There is a pause after the second sound and the next heart sound. The characteristic rhythm of heartbeat is lub-dub, pause, lub-dub, pause. There are also some abnormal heart sounds called heart murmurs, which can be either pathological or benign in nature. This may be caused by turbulent blood flow or blood flow through a damaged or overworked heart valve or due to narrowing of the heart's vessels. The function of the heart is maintained by regulating mechanisms such as autonomic nervous system. The normal sinus rhythm of the heart is influenced by the autonomic nervous system through sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. The parasympathetic vagus nerve acts to decrease the heart rate, while those from sympathetic trunk increases the heart rate and travel to both the sinoatrial and atrioventricular nodes, as well as to the atria and ventricles. The ventricles are more richly innervated by sympathetic fibers than parasympathetic fibers. The cardiac center. It is located in the medulla oblongata of the brain and has two compartments: the cardio-accelerator center, which accelerates the heart rate and stroke volume, and the cardio-inhibitor center, which decreases the heart rate and stroke volume. Hormonal control. Hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline secreted by the adrenal gland increase the activities of the heart. Ions. Ions like potassium and calcium also influence heart rate. High body temperature, hypoxemia, dehydration, strong emotional response, and low potassium or sodium level accelerate heart rate, while cold, relaxation, and metabolic factors decreases it. The lymphatic system is a part of the circulatory system and is a vital part of the immune system. It comprises of a network of lymphatic vessels that carry lymph directionally towards the heart. Lymph is a semi-transparent and colorless fluid containing lymphocytes and other white blood cells. It also contains waste products and cellular debris together with bacteria and proteins. The lymphatic system consists of thin-walled lymphatic vessels carrying lymph nodes, and two collecting ducts. The tonsils, adenoids, spleen, and thymus are all part of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic vessels are larger than capillaries, and most of them are smaller than the smallest veins. The human circulatory system possesses an average of 20 liters of blood per day through capillary filtration, which removes plasma while leaving the blood cells. Roughly around 17 liters of the filtered plasma are reabsorbed directly into the blood vessels, while the remaining 3 liters remain in the interstitial fluid. Lymphatic vessels drain these fluids from the tissues surrounding the cells and eventually return it to the veins. All lymph pass through lymph nodes which filter damaged cells, cancer cells, and foreign particles out of the lymph. The lymph vessels drain into collecting ducts which empty their contents into the two subclavian veins located under the collarbones. These veins then join to form the superior vena cava. Associated organs composed of lymphoid tissue are the sites of lymphocyte production. Lymphocytes are concentrated in the lymph nodes, which are organized collection of lymphoid tissue. The lymph nodes consists of lymphoid follicles in an outer portion called the cortex. A lymph follicle is a dense collection of lymphocytes, the number, size, and configuration of which change in accordance with the functional state of the lymph node. For example, the follicles expand significantly when encountering a foreign antigen. The selection of B cells or B lymphocytes occurs in the germinal center of the lymph nodes. The inner portion of the node is called medulla, which is surrounded by the cortex, which has mostly immature T cells or thymocytes on all sides except for a portion known as the hilum. The paracortex immediately surrounds the medulla and has a mixture of immature and mature T cells. The hilum is present as a depression on the surface of the lymph node, imparting it bean or ovoid shape. It is the junction for entry and exit of arteries, veins, along with lymphatic vessels. Several afferent lymph vessels bring in lymph, which percolates through the substance of the lymph node and is then drained out by the efferent lymph vessel. There are about 500 to 600 lymph nodes in the human body, many of which are grouped in clusters in different regions as in the underarm and abdominal areas. The spleen, which is located on the left side of the body just above the kidney, is the largest lymphatic organ. It controls the amount of RBCs and blood storage in the body and helps to fight infection by killing foreign microorganisms. The lymphatic system has multiple interrelated functions such as it transports lymph, oxygen and nutrients throughout the body. It helps in the removal of interstitial fluid from tissues and maintains its volume. It absorbs and transports fatty acid and fats as chyle from the digestive system. It also helps the body to get rid of toxin, waste and other unwanted materials. It transports WBCs to and from the lymph nodes into the bones. It transports antigen presenting cells like dendritic cells to the lymph nodes when immune response is stimulated. The lymphatic system also provides protection against the spread of infection and cancer. Thus, in this module, we have seen that blood low in oxygen from the systemic circulation enters the right atrium of heart from the superior and inferior vena cava and is pumped to the right ventricle. From here, it enters into the pulmonary circulation through the lungs where it receives oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide. Oxygenated blood then returns to the left atrium, passes through the left ventricle and is pumped out through the aorta to the systemic circulation, where the oxygen is used and metabolized to carbon dioxide. In addition, the blood carries nutrients from the digestive tract to various organs of the body while transporting waste to the liver and kidneys. The heart contracts at a resting rate close to 72 beats per minute. The pacemaker cells make up 1% of cells and form the conduction system of the heart, helping in the contraction and relaxation. Lymph also flows throughout the body in a continuous loop by the lymphatic system in only one direction, that is, upward toward the neck. The lymphatic and blood circulation together helps in delivering nutrients to the body, maintaining the pH of the body fluids and in protecting the body from foreign bodies.